President of India's oldest industry association, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, a tenure which she just finished. Her Vice Council and Association have been consistently sought over the years by industry in India and overseas, by think tanks as well as by the Indian government. She is a member of the prestigious Prime Minister's Trade and Industry Council as well as of the National Manufacturing Council. Overseas, she is on the board of Nestle as non-executive director and was a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Climate Change. Mrs. Kidwai is also a part of the Global Advisory Board of Harvard Business School and Aspen Institute, India.
Even areas that we can look at going forward. A lot of questions come about India and India's economy. I was just in Davos not even a week ago, and India has been center stage in Davos, but has dropped from center stage at Davos. And we have only ourselves, I believe, to blame for it. So if I could at the end of this, through the questions that I hope you will ask me at the end, have at least left you with some thoughts on what it might take to get us back to what I believe is important for us as a country, and that is to bring us back to the 8 to 9% that we have seen as growth for the country. And this year, as we end the fiscal year in March, it's widely believed that we will be sub 5%. In fact, FICCI's estimates are at 4.8% GDP. So we have halved where we were, and that is a crying shame. So if we look, and I'll quote what our own finance minister had to say only less than a year ago when he announced the budget, growth is a necessary condition and we must unhesitatingly embrace growth as the highest goal. It is growth that will lead to inclusive development. Without growth, there will be neither development nor inclusiveness. So if this is the mantra that is going to guide us, then growth is critical. So maybe it's worth looking at what is the impetus for growth? What drives the Indian economy? And here I'm reminded actually of something which Winston Churchill stated. The empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. And his words actually resonate in an age which is really a knowledge economy today, although he said it many, many years ago. Now, all of us here are familiar with the importance and significance and actually what the IT and BPO sectors have brought to the country. This industry has raised our profile at the global level. In fact, India's almost become synonymous with IT. It's known as one of our biggest strengths. And in this, it's worth just reflecting on how did this come to be? After all, we were not always known for IT and BPO. So what happened? What created this big change and brought IT and BPO to the fore? In fact, Thomas, economist, which I hope you've heard about, traces it to the 1990s when he has stated in his book, in fact, that when a combination of India's excess of highly skilled technology workers and an abundance of fiber optic cables, so read infrastructure, converged to give India an edge in the technology market, he cites this as one of those events that flattened the world, creating a more level global economic playing field. So it's time for us to reflect here in the country. What is this next disruptive wave going to look like? Could it be in agriculture and food processing, as we are already amongst the largest food producers in the world? It's not a well-known fact, but we are amongst the largest. We're the largest milk producers, second largest fruit and vegetable producers in the world. And here we are with land and water as a scarce resource, and yet our productivity in agriculture, which is a huge user of these resources, both of water and land, our productivity is still substandard. So is this the next wave for us? Improve productivity in agriculture. We are already there as a large producer. Or could it be in the energy or the water sectors, as we do need to devise innovative solutions to meet these twin shortages? Or maybe in the export sectors, as China vacates exports and becomes more domestic oriented, is there space for us to jump in where China vacates? So we need to really look into the future, identify what is that next potential wave, and build the support ecosystem which helps us drive that next wave for the country. So now let me turn to another important segment of our economy, the manufacturing sector, which has actually been a huge disappointment. The government has come out with an agenda for the sector. As you know, manufacturing today is 17% of GDP, sub 17%. The government has a stated objective to make it 25% of the GDP of the economy. But we are far from progressing at the pace we should. And what we really need is an enabling environment that encourages more investment in the manufacturing sector. And we just aren't getting there. In fact, I think it's important here to highlight a great national leader who was a great friend of India, Nelson Mandela, who said, "Money won't create success. The freedom to make it will." So how do we liberate the entrepreneurship of India, the knowledge of India, the enthusiasm of many like you to create a business and have an enterprise in an unfettered way, so that it is you who drives that next wave of entrepreneurship and manufacturing? So these days we speak about investments and India in a pretty despondent mood, right? We sort of think about it and we worry. It's not happening. I think we do need to remind ourselves that our consumer market is growing, and in fact, we are still on course to become the 5th largest consumer market in the world by 2025. So nobody denies the importance of India as a market. In fact, there's huge demand, even today and growing, for automobiles, consumer durables, FMCG products, pharmaceuticals, textiles, housing, telecom equipment. This list can go on. And as our population becomes more prosperous, seeks to fulfill aspirations, we clearly are an attractive market. And this possibly is what explains why many companies from across the world, most recently we've seen Unilever announce $3.5 billion, which they brought in to their company in India by buying its shares. GSK, likewise, $2 billion. PepsiCo, Coke, Hitachi, Hyundai, Samsung, Toyota. These all remain committed to the Indian market. They are here. They see India's attractiveness as a market and also as an investment destination. In fact, the latest global survey by E&Y, and this is a less well-known fact, ranks India as the most attractive investment destination. In fact, we are followed by Brazil and China. So we're right up there. In terms of investment, USA, France, and Japan are the top 3 investors most likely to invest in India, as per this survey. And the sectors which are likely to attract most deals include auto, technology, life sciences, and consumer products. So there are a number of other factors that impact India's economic fortunes. And that includes our relationship with other countries. The dynamics in Asia, for instance, are changing. And Japan is actively investing in India, and India has repeatedly come up as a preferred choice for Japanese multinationals. And in fact, you saw it in terms of this last visit of Prime Minister Abe, who was here as the chief guest for the Republic Day parade. And he squeezed this in very early in his having taken charge. In fact, he was in Davos. He was pretty much lauded as the most interesting speech at Davos this year. He finished there. He ran back to Japan to address the opening of the Diet there, and then came to India, which would just suggest in a busy schedule what importance he gives India and early in his engagement with the world. So The importance of Japan and what Japan is already doing for India through this Delhi-Mumbai corridor, which is India's largest infrastructure project, is evidence of some of the changes that are happening in terms of the way India itself is engaging with the rest of the world. So it's not just Japan. China and India too are finding more and more ways to collaborate. And we saw this in the recent visit of our Prime Minister to China. And in fact, we are therefore an attractive market, and we should not forget that. However, we do not make it easy to do business. So it is about closing the gap between the attractiveness and how difficult we make it for people to realize that attractiveness or and potential. Going back to where else we're seeing trade ties or relationships changing across the world, we are deepening our connect with countries of the ASEAN region, as well as the BRICS countries. And in fact, we've seen the formation of an Indo-ASEAN Business Council, a BRICS Business Council, where India is a key ingredient. And we have all seen how critical we were in the WTO deliberations in Bali. Because of us, it could have failed, but because of us, it succeeded and the discussions went forward under the able negotiations by Minister Sharma and his team. So India is critical to many trade ties today. So we are attractive as a market. We are important in terms of our relationships and changing relationships with the rest of the world. So what else is it that we should laud and remind ourselves, particularly when we are despondent? And the other area I like to highlight is innovation. It comes back to entrepreneurship to some extent as well. And this does not only reside, to my mind, in high-end labs of large companies. And I've used this example before, and I'll use it again, and that is the case of the dabbawalas. Now, I'm going to have to ask you for a show of hands. Who all know what the dabbawalas are? Oh, good. Okay. So what we have is a very prominent service, which is largely a Mumbai service. It's a model of efficiency and efficacy, and I think it's also a reflection of the Indian work ethos. One of the keys to the systems, if you've studied it or you know it, is, does anyone know what the dabbawalas do? What is the key to their success? What? One. Put your hands up. Let's do it one at a time. Yeah? Yeah? You had your hand up? Yeah? What? Food on time, absolutely. But how? What is the secret to that success? There's supply chain, yeah, but how? Coding? Someone said coding? Zero error is an outcome, but what gets it there? Yeah? It's a process improvement, yeah, and it is actually, so I heard someone say coding. It is also a system. So can you imagine that this is a team of largely illiterate people, but they have perfected a color coding system to such a high level of efficiency that they get the highest Six Sigma rating in an audit that was done, which means that they are right 99.9999% of the time. So it is about process, it is about supply chain, it is about having mastered it. And it really is a very simple innovation if you think about it, but they do get it right. And to my mind, it is, if you look at it, this is the sort of thing which India is capable of doing. It finds a solution for itself, it works with existing resources, and succeeds. So if this sounds a bit familiar as a business model, one dabbawala explained to a reporter, there is a service called FedEx that is similar to ours, but they don't deliver lunch. So what I think really is that with our extraordinary use of available resources, commodities, attractive market, that we have to remind ourselves about the words of Tagore, who, as you all know, was India's first Nobel laureate in literature. And what he said was, if I can't make it through one door, I'll go through another door, or I'll make a door. So it's a little like the Delhi driver, right? You find your way. Yeah? So we can see the effects of this innovation actually on accessibility. The world's lowest telecom costs resulted in increased cellular phone use. The world's cheapest car, or let's say the highest value car, Tata Nano, made headlines around the globe and is actually seen as a turning point in the global auto industry. The benefits of business innovation permeate all levels of Indian society, and much of it is helping facilitate employment opportunities, and it does this directly or indirectly. And then if you just look at, just one silo, and this can be replicated across different silos, you look at healthcare. And I thought, now let me just see, what has India done in healthcare that is truly innovative, right? And the examples are amazing. In fact, they really are life and game-changing. Jaipur Foot, recognized by the Time magazine in 2009 as one of the world's 50 best innovations. 99% of the patients are below the poverty line. Or Arvind Eye Care, which delivers cataract operations at 1/6 of the cost of an Indian hospital, 1/30th of the cost of a US hospital. In 2003, they became the single largest single cataract surgery provider in the world. Or Narayan Hrudayalaya, which has perfected a low-cost approach to heart surgery at half the cost of an Indian hospital, 1/16th the cost of the USA. And in fact, Forbes has just listed India as 39th in innovation among 145 countries, so we're pretty high up. And we really need more of these. In fact, there's a Millennium Alliance Fund, which we had set up as FICCI, USA, Department of Science and Technology in the Government of India, which has been a great success, I believe, because it's brought to the fore solutions that are aimed at addressing India's development challenges. It's really a way, so if any of you have bright ideas, you must enter this particular competition. And there are at least 1,200 applications last year. But there's a jury of well-known people who picks the winners, and the winners get money to get their projects going. We find sponsors for them, and we can see these projects then see the light of day. So now let me touch upon some of the key economic challenges that have been bothering us. We have so much going for us, but then why don't we get it? Why aren't we getting to our full potential? So we've clearly had a problem with the twin deficits, the current account deficit, and you've seen CAD written all over the newspapers every day, and the fiscal deficit. Now the CAD has fortunately come under control, and the only question I would ask is, if it took just 3 months to set this right, why hadn't we done it earlier? But the fact is that we've managed to control it, and very effectively by our finance minister, where it's dropped from where it was trending to 5% down to 2.5%. And therefore, this last news of tapering, which happened just 2 days ago, and I had said this a month ago, that India would not be deeply impacted, and we have not been deeply impacted, because we were much stronger with this current account deficit at 2.5 than where we were when the current account deficit was trending to 5, and the first news of US tapering happened. And you will remember what happened to our exchange rate. It went to 68, there was chaos in the stock markets, and in fact, that is when action began to be taken. And the action, as you know, is that gold imports have been contained, exports have increased, including of ores, which we had stopped. And in fact, we enhanced the NRI deposits which through a scheme that government offered, $34 billion came into India. And this for us is a huge asset, by the way. $70 billion comes into India every year from our expatriate Indian community. How many countries in the world can boast this as a resource? And it comes year after year and grows, in fact. And we were able to tap into this to help us out when our current account deficit was running out of control. But we still have the problem of the fiscal deficit, where we cannot rest, yet much needs to be done. And I fear that while we will achieve the red lines drawn by the government of 4.8%, we will reach that this year. It's not going to be so easy for us to deliver on this over the next year, because revenues are dropping and expenditure, unfortunately, is increasing, particularly on social schemes. So we need to basically address our fisc. Then let's look at inflation. And what is particularly worrying now is inflation now is high at rural inflation levels, not just urban. And we've seen that this is a perennial problem for the last 3 years. And then food inflation particularly has been very high, driving up overall prices. And RBI, of course, been very proactive in ensuring that the situation does not go out of hand and using monetary policy, which means interest rates remain high. And as long as interest rates remain high, investments don't happen. So it's a very vicious cycle. So you could almost say investments aren't going to happen till inflation comes down, because as long as monetary policy remains, high interest rates will remain to drive investment down. And so we do need to reverse this cycle, and therefore at the core we have to crack inflation. Additionally, our companies operate in an environment where considerable time and resources are spent on dealing with regulations. All of us know that in terms of ease of doing business, India ranks 134th out of 189 countries. And the countries that rank behind us are really very small and really insignificant countries. We are, in terms of procedural reforms, again, in a space where we need a lot of improvement. Our businesses are expanding, but if we are being able to support them by an enabling environment or a far more proactive environment, we could grow faster and better. So easing the process of setting up businesses would certainly help. It would unleash the entrepreneurial spirit amongst professionals, amongst young people, amongst people with ideas and visions, enabling everyone to follow their dreams without having to run from pillar to post while trying to turn their dreams into reality. And it will also, of course, help generate employment and possibly give birth to future mega corporations. In fact, if you look at the story of India and you look at your Sensex companies, you will find that in the top 50,